Happy Monday morning, everybody. This is your host, Christopher Rennie, bringing you another edition of the Chris Rennie Show, episode 29. We're getting up there again. On this episode today, we're going to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, surprise, surprise, and how quarterback evaluation doesn't always have to be that complicated. The Patriots are really bad. That's honestly my second biggest story from the weekend. I don't know what Bill Belichick has in front of him, but they're going to get gifted Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields by year's end. So, we could look forward to that. The best moment of the weekend, college football moment, and my Heisman frontrunners, as well as an NFL whip around on today's episode. Before the show begins, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChrisRennieCFB, and don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast. The Browns lost this weekend, so I need a pick-me-up. I need a 5-star rating. So provide them if you must, and let's keep this thing rolling. I can't do this anymore. What's this guy saying? Who gave these national radio hosts these jobs? Jeez. Can't even understand that guy. What's he even talking about? I can't take it anymore. Those national media personalities making you feel like that. Make a change. Listen to this idiot about the sports that matter from the opinion that matters. Haha, you said it, not me. Now for today's takes from the most opinionated host in sports talk. Yeah, so I bit my lip this weekend. It's been pretty insufferable. It has been it's hard to eat, when it all gets all canker-sory. It's hard to drink water even. But I am going to fight through this show today, and I'm going to give you a really good one, I believe. It is my flu game without being sick. It just hurts to talk. Sometimes it sounds like I have a lisp. We're going to try to avoid both of those on today's episode. But you know what? There has been a kicker sore on the NFL in recent memory, in history, honestly. The Cincinnati Bengals, they've never really been good at football. Mike Brown, not a good dude. Not very willing to spend money. Did not have the same passion as his father for running an organization. Was he born into it? Maybe. But, I feel like if you're from a football family, you'd really take on the mantle and love the job and be willing to spend money to not only increase the facilities, make it a better place to play, but also you kind of don't want to watch and get laughed at year in and year out. I feel like pride would have to come into play at some point. And you know what? It hasn't. And you know what? He is still going to get lucky with the fact that he is about to build a winner. And, a lot of teams get this wrong, and that is why they suffer for so long. Look at their rival up in the northeast part of Ohio, the Cleveland Browns. The running joke is the football jersey, the endless one. And, we've had Baker Mayfield for quite some time, but we still add names. He was the last one added. I'm not saying he's the guy. I'm not saying it's over. But when you look at quarterbacks, Joe Burrow was built differently. Okay, you read back to his time in high school at Athens. Athens, Ohio is not the wealth capital of the world. It's actually the opposite. It is a poor mining community with very low income individuals. Now, Joe Burrow was not part of that population, but he took an underdog team of a bunch of coal miner sons, and he led them to the 4 or 5A state championship game. He is a winner. He lost his starting job at Ohio State to a guy who went on to be an All-American and a Heisman favorite. And he got invited to the Heisman, Dwayne Haskins, and ended up going to LSU and having a pretty solid year. Nothing special. And then the greatest thing that could ever happen to a quarterback in college is an elite young mind, an elite young passing coordinator lands on the laps of LSU to go with a very experienced Steve Ensminger to really build an offense that is electric. When you have Jamar Chase, when you have Justin Jefferson, when you have the receivers he had, Terrace Marshall, there were no real challenges for Joe Burrow as a quarterback. And even against the best of the best, he prepared, he came, and he elevated a program that just needed to be elevated a little bit more to win a national title. Look at LSU this single few games after Joe Burrow left. They are awful. All right, so what does that tell you? Athens, Ohio, not really known for their athletic endeavors and success. They were elite at basketball and football with Joe Burrow on the roster. All right. That's cool. All right, he was good in high school. All right, what does he do? He goes and loses his job in college to another pretty elite quarterback at the time, and then goes on and, develops a little bit, and then continues to develop, and then becomes the greatest college football quarterback of all time in a single season. All right, so what do the Bengals have? They have the number 1 pick, a generational quarterback talent to choose from. All you had to do was not mess it up, and they didn't. And you know what? They're reaping the rewards early. You could look at that roster, and you can try to cherry pick some guys, but I'm going to let you know, on the defensive side of the ball, not a single player that I'm excited about. On their offensive line, Joe Burrow was getting his head taken off half the time in the first few games. Not a line I'm excited about. Their receivers, A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, and crew, their whole crew, they're pretty good. I'll give it to them. Joe Mixon, a pretty solid running back. Hasn't been this year. Gio Bernard, he was awesome yesterday. That is what a great player is able to do. Joe Burrow has elevated a Bengals franchise already. And yes, it's been minute. It has been very minimal. But I can tell you, yesterday I have a lot of Bengals fans friends. They were talking like I've never seen them talk before. They found the savior. They're excited. The Bengals are a team that may never lose again. That is what it's all about. And that is hope. And yes, they got the Steelers this week. They're probably going to lose to the Steelers. I'm going to be honest. No, in 2 weeks they got the Steelers. So they're probably going to lose that game. But then guess who they get back-to-back weeks? They get the Washington football team and the New York Giants. Then they go to a team I'd say they're pretty even against, the Miami Dolphins. And then they get the Cowboys and the Steelers again. And then they get the Texans. So I only count 4 losses there. And then you've got 2 toss-ups. And then the rest, I got the Bengals. And I would never have predicted that at the beginning of the season. So the Bengals got it right. Joe Burrow is their guy. They are set at quarterback for the next 10 to 15 years. And that is what it's all about. So why does quarterback evaluation have to be so hard sometimes? Well, sometimes you get a guy who has more talent than Joe Burrow. Think about all the arm talent that's ever come through the draft. There are guys who have much better arms than Joe Burrow. There are guys who have much weaker arms that have been successful. But the point I'm making here about quarterback evaluation is it's not a perfect science. But when you have it easy, like when you have a Joe Burrow at number 1, or you have an Andrew Luck at number 1, you just take the easy route, you make the decision, and you make the draft pick. Because for the next 10 years, at least, you're going to have an elite quarterback that can get you to the playoffs. The Bengals got it right. The Bengals, once again, solidify my opinion that the AFC North will finish this year as the best division. And there's not anyone who can tell me different. And that's the truth. Man, it kind of takes you, like when you see what Joe Burrow was in college, it makes that year where you had Deshaun Watson, Mitch Trubisky, and Patrick Mahomes that much harder. Because when you look at Patrick Mahomes, yes, he was slinging the football around. He had a cannon arm. But it was all about getting it under control. And that's what an NFL game is about. It's about control. It's why when you see Deshaun Watson, he's always under control. When you see Mitch Trubisky, he's never under control. When you see Patrick Mahomes, he reeled it in. Now he's just making throws that no one should ever be making, It's sort of what I talked about last week with Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield as well. Like, when you look at Joe Burrow, he's always in control of the situation. He's always in control. He's always comfortable. Yesterday in a windy game, Baker Mayfield didn't look control for more than 2 minutes at a time. It was never a game in doubt. And that's the difference between a franchise quarterback and a guy who's always going to be a debate. And I think that's just the truth. And I think when you look at Patrick Mahomes, he had undeniable arm talent. Some people were wondering about the intangibles, the offensive system. Well, you're looking at Cliff Kingsbury in the NFL. They're doing pretty good in Arizona. Quarterback evaluations. Not a simple science. A lot of teams get it wrong. I know from experience. This next one, the Patriots, it's going to be a quarterback-centric show. Wonder why. It's like they're very important in the NFL. So the Patriots made the decision to bring in Cam Newton during the offseason. Everyone was like, wow, Bill Belichick going from Tom Brady to Cam Newton. We're going to see a very interesting take on the Patriots offense this year. And we have. It has been interesting, and it's been very bad. So when you look at the grand scheme of things, many people thought the Patriots were a sure thing to make the playoffs, with or without Tom Brady. All right, so we've seen the Patriots run out 3 different quarterbacks this year. Cam Newton, Brian Hoyer, and Jarrett Stidham. All have produced similar results. And that's not good if you're Cam Newton, to be as bad as Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer. So what are some of the roots to this problem that I'm seeing in the league? All right, the first root of the problem is this team was not built for a quarterback that wasn't going to elevate the team around him. Now, you look at the history. Cam Newton used to be able to elevate the teams before he had a shoulder surgery on his throwing arm and before he took a physical beating that no player has taken before at the quarterback position. Even when it wasn't sacks or hits in the pocket, he was taking off and he was delivering his shoulder into players. That is a recipe for long-term health issues, and we're seeing the results. When you have a team that their second best player on offense is James White, a receiving running back, you're going to have problems with anybody that's not named Tom Brady, okay? I think that's pretty straightforward, and I don't know why it's so hard for some people to understand. The talent outside of Cam is the worst he has ever played with in the NFL. N'Keal Harry, he has never really proven himself. Julian Edelman, he was Tom Brady's favorite toy for quite some time. Short, quick routes. Tom Brady loves to throw them. No true running back. You've got James White one week. You got Damian Harris the next week. You've got Rex Burkhead the other. You never know what you're going to get out of them either. You never know which one's actually going to produce. Yesterday it was Damian Harris. Unfortunately, he was on my fantasy football bench once again. Should have known he was going to have a good game. But the defense on the other side of the ball, old and slow. So now you're starting to take all of these words, It's not looking great for the Patriots moving forward. Is the system Tom Brady? Is the system Bill Belichick? The answer is still uncertain because you want to know something? I truly believe Tom Brady saw the writing on the wall. He looked at the roster top to bottom and he said, I don't know about this one, Chief. I don't know if this is how I'm going to be able to get another ring. I don't know if this is how I'm going to be able to set more passing records. I don't know if this team is worth carrying anymore because he looks across the way into the Midwest and he looks into the state of Kansas or whatever, Missouri, Kansas City. Doesn't matter to me which side it's on. But he looks over there, and he sees Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball 65 yards, rolling to his right, 65 yards rolling to his left, completing no-look passes, and, kind of just annihilating everybody last year in the playoffs. Now, the Chiefs have taken a step back. I think we all expected it. They weren't going to be perfect again, but the Patriots are terrible. Their roster is awful. Their offensive line has been decimated. Their receiving core is made for a guy who is getting paid to make all those players better. The cap room is tight, and there is just really no options for the Patriots right now that'll make them better at the trade deadline without giving up assets that Bill Belichick's going to find way more important than any player on the field currently. Okay, so Bill Belichick is going to be able to rebuild this team in his vision over time. But realistically, you look at why Tom Brady left, and I think it's very simple. Who would you rather be throwing to? Mike Evans or Julian Edelman? Chris Godwin, who hasn't been on the field much, I know, or N'Keal Harry? Scotty Miller or whoever is the third Patriots receiver at this point? These questions are easy to answer. He's got his buddy Gronk in Tampa Bay. Now he's got Antonio Brown. As much as I don't like the guy, you can't deny his talent. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, outside a running back, provided a much better situation for Tom Brady. And I know Ronald Jones is probably a better running back than the three in New England, but I do think Tom would prefer the three in New England on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers than he would just Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette. It's just there's a certain amount of challenges the Patriots would have had to overcome this year that I just don't think they were going to be able to, unless Cam Newton was the Cam Newton we all saw way before 4 or 5 years ago. If he wasn't that, the Patriots weren't going to be successful. But you want to know what? The AFC East is still wide open. The Bills have not looked great recently. 6-2. They're not looking as good though. I know 2 straight wins. But do we really believe in the Buffalo Bills? Is that something we can go to bed at night, sleep, and be like, yeah, you know what? I think the Bills can win a Super Bowl. I don't. I mean, the Dolphins are 4-3. Good for them. We'll see. That is the New England Patriots, though. They are now behind the Bills and the Dolphins, 2 teams they routinely beat. And you know what? The Jets, they're terrible. They're going to finish the year off. They're going to let Adam Gase coach it. Odds are the Jets, knowing their history, are going to win 8 straight. Make some noise. But the NFL has been really good this year. It's been exciting, but I will say it's been a good ride. We had every single sport on at one time. We had baseball, basketball, football, hockey, soccer. I could turn on the TV and there would be a live sporting event. And the sport junkie in me, after that long layoff, was like, holy crap, here we go. And now it's just football, and now it's just college football, and we've got a little bit till the NBA starts. I feel like that Dave Chappelle skit. Got any more of those games? I really do miss all the sports being on at one time, but I get it, I understand. We're going to have to go back to normal at some point. It was a gift to us at the end of quarantine. I guess it's over, right? I don't know. But yeah, so this moment is one, and this is part of the reason we watch sports. And I honestly thought it was more funny than anything. But Joe Tessitore is one of the best in the business at calling college football games. He is an establishment at ESPN, and his son is a punter. All right, so the punter never really gets involved. You know, he hits a bomb every once in a while. People get excited. But really, they go out there, they do their job, they're forgetful, and those moments come and go without really much changing. So what was a normal lining up for punt, it was a field goal actually. He was serving as the holder. It was normal, a normal play, 4th and 2. They could get it, they could fake this thing, or they could just kick the field goal like everyone else normally would. But little John Tessitore, same size as his dad, just a little dude, punts the ball a mile, runs up behind the center, gets a hard counts. Clemson jumps off sides. They don't know how to react. All right, guess who's on the call? Joe Tessitore. And in a moment of father-son that you can't really trade in the world, it was spectacular. It was one of those moments in college football that's why you watch college football, One of the big reasons you do it. I'm going to link the video on my Twitter. Go check it out. That was the best moment of the weekend to me in sports. It's hard. There's not many fans there, so you don't really get any of those touching, heartwarming moments. And it was a good one because very rarely do you get to call your own kid, number one. And then number two, very rarely do you get to call them making a play when they're a punter. That had to be a special moment for the Tessitore family. Awesome. It was fun. It made that game even more electric than already was perceived. And Clemson survived. Trevor Lawrence lost all his Heisman votes, though. So we'll talk about that, actually, right now. So we're going to talk about the Heisman frontrunners. I love college football. I love talking college football. The Heisman frontrunners in no particular order, a.k.a. the exact order in which I think they are ranked, because that's how they came to me. All right, so due to impartiality purposes, I am voting Mac Jones as my first place right now. Now, it's not any slouch. It's not anything like that. Mac Jones has been an electric quarterback this year. By the time the season is over, I do think Justin Fields will supersede him. He had a Heisman moment against Penn State with his falling little twist throw he did. But Mac Jones, he is a guy who many people didn't even think was going to start this year. He was a guy who wasn't as highly touted as Bryce Young or Tua Tagovailoa. He went to Alabama, and, it was quite an interesting thing. When you look at his recruiting profile, he was a 3-star recruit just outside that 4-star range, so he's close. He's from Jacksonville. He was a very good quarterback in high school, never a great quarterback there, wasn't ever the best. And, he had Bryce Young, who was an elite 5-star, played at Modern Day, was an elite prospect. He was coming after Tua. He filled in for him last year. A lot of Alabama fans had question about his consistency, and I think a lot of those questions have been answered. So far in 2020, he's played 6 football games. He has thrown for 2,100 yards, 16 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. That is one of the best stat lines through 6 games you could find a quarterback having career-wise. And I think when you really look at what he's provided to Alabama, the two things mostly have been steady and the ability to get the ball into playmakers' hands. So he's been steady, and he's got the ball to his playmakers. And now when Jalen Waddle got hurt, the playmakers fell down just a little bit. But he, once again, stepped up. And I know Mississippi State's kind of falling apart. This is Always what happens in Mike Leach's first year. He comes in, he runs off all the people who don't like him, and then he gets a bunch of players who are not as good, and he starts winning football games again. So he beat the crap out of them, but they beat the crap out of almost everybody. Alabama has been really good, and if it wasn't Jalen Waddle, it's been Devontae Smith. If it wasn't Devontae Smith, it's been another one of their talented wide receivers. But the one consistent key cog to this Alabama Crimson Tide team hasn't been their defense, hasn't been their wide receivers, hasn't been their running backs. It has been Mac Jones. And, it's very rare for Alabama quarterbacks to win the Heisman. I think with how good Tua was in his time to never win it, it just shows how good quarterbacks are now, number one. And number two, how valued the Crimson Tide football team is as a whole versus one individual. That means they have to be excellent. And I think Mac Jones has done that in every single game so far this year. Mississippi State, 41-0. Tennessee, 48-17. Georgia, 41-24. Alabama, he had to outscore Lane Kiffin and that Mississippi team. See, he did that. They couldn't stop him. I don't think Alabama had a drive where they didn't score, besides turnovers. But outside of that, they have scored over 40 points in every game so far. They are going to absolutely house LSU. I don't think there's any questions about it. I think LSU is the worst team in college football right in the Power 5 right now. That is how bad I think they are. It was a fraud. All right, but Mac Jones is going to show out once again. All right, so next on the list is Justin Fields. All right, now this can get controversial real quick. I'm going to throw out the bias here, or not, maybe not. I don't think I have to. When you really look at it, what has Justin Fields done this season in 2 games? Well, first off, he has won 2 games. Some of the quarterbacks on the list, way lower, have not. So he's thrown for 594 yards, 2 games, 6 touchdowns. He has a 97.2 QBR, which is first in the country. All right, so his passer rating is 199.7. College passer rating is weird. I think it goes up to like 243 or something. But that would take absolute perfection on a level. But completion percentage 82%, nothing to laugh at. 4 touchdowns, passing, and then he has been exceptional. 6 touchdowns. He's got 4 against Penn State, 2 against Nebraska. He's got a rushing touchdown against Nebraska, so he's got 7 total on the year. He's got a big win. He went into Happy Valley. Heisman moments aren't going to feel the same because you're not going to hear the deafening sound of a college football team, this crowd just going dead silent. But he's got a long way to go. I think realistically he has shown that he is the key cog and the best player in college football in my eyes. He's got a long way to go to catch up to Mac Jones from a numbers standpoint. I think he will get there. Now, don't get me wrong. I am rooting for Justin Fields to win the Heisman. I am rooting for Ohio State to win a national title. We're not going to hide obvious facts. But you can't sit here and tell me that in 6 or 7 games, if Justin Fields is continuing at this rate, he's not going to have a very similar to Joe Burrow-esque year. He's got Rutgers next week, and I know he's only going to play a half, but he might have 5 touchdown passes by that time the half is over. So let's not be slight here. I think Justin Fields has a really good opportunity. He has a big moment to close out against, and in championship week, he's going to be playing Wisconsin or another good NFC or a Big Ten West opponent. So I really do think it's a good opportunity for Justin Fields here to make a statement over the next couple of weeks statistics-wise, and then in the final moments of the season against his more challenging teams. He's got Indiana in 3 weeks. Who would have thought I'd be saying that there? And then he's got Michigan in, I think, 5 or 6. So it's all coming. It's all going to be in front of us. Mac Jones versus Justin Fields. Trevor Lawrence missing 2 games really hurts his. We're going to talk about him in a few. But there is a Clemson player who's going to be third on my list of Heisman front runners. Travis Etienne. All right. Travis Etienne, I can't remember their nickname for him, but he is a spectacular football player. He came back. He is now the SEC rushing leader. He's also scored a touchdown in 42 games, so that's freaking ridiculous. He's only 21. He just started being able to drink beer in January. He is a 1999 kid. All right, so I am going to take a break from the show and really think about that being 24 in December. Yeah, so that's a tough realization now. These are who I'm talking about. This is what the job's about, I guess. All right. Well, when you look at Travis Etienne's statistics, he has been as exceptional this year as every other year. I think the two running backs who have potential to win this are Travis Etienne, who is now going to carry Clemson 2 weeks in a row, get his momentum to overtake his teammate Trevor, and he's going to be able to overtake Najee Harris because he's not competing directly on a national spotlight game every single week with Mac Jones. All right, so this really gives the opportunity for Travis to really show he is the key cog to this team. So far in the year, he's played 7 games, had 103 rushing attempts, 606 yards, 9 touchdowns, 29 receptions, 434 yards, 2 touchdowns. So he's already got 1,001. He's already got, 1,040 yards from scrimmage. He's had a year, honestly, and I think the way they utilize him in the screen game, the way they utilize him in the passing game, is dynamic, and it's a reason he is able to put up so many good receiving stats. Like in the game against Boston College, when they were coming back, it was all on him because he came back, he fumbled, but he was going to have to be the guy that led them back, and he was, and he did it, and he had some really good stats receiving the football in the game. Like, look at his rushing stats, 20 carries, 84 yards. That's good. 4.2 yards per carry. You want to see his receiving stats? 7 catches, 140 yards, 1 touchdown. All right. That's unheard of. Running backs don't do that very often. Not all his catches were screens or little flare-outs. He's a very good football player. He's third on my Heisman list. I just don't see a running back winning it anytime soon with quarterbacks playing the way they're going to. I think you're going to have to adjust the statistics. I think you're going to have to adjust the evaluation on how you think a running back is the best player in the country, because as much as you want to love and give the award to Travis Etienne, who had 224 total yards of offense and 2 touchdowns, DJ Uiagalelei went 30 for 41, 342 yards, 2 touchdowns. And that takes me to the next guy, Trevor Lawrence. All right, now, yes, I know DJ struggled in the first half, but you can't tell me a quarterback coming off the bench, first time all season really, he has, and you're going to tell me that DJ's going to throw for 342 yards, like very similar. They babied him into the game, and in the second half they let him loose. You're going to tell me that the guy who missed the game, Trevor Lawrence, get healthy, Trevor, and he's going to miss the Notre Dame game. If DJ wins those 2 games, it's going to create the Bama conundrum for any Clemson quarterback after. The team, the culture, all the talent around them is greater than the sum of the quarterback. And that just means the guy is going to have to be even more special than Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence has been so spectacular for the Clemson Tigers. Like, when you really break it down game by game, yes, he's had some games where he struggled, but every quarterback in their career has had games where they haven't looked as sharp, or they haven't looked as good. Trevor Lawrence is not immune to playing the bad football game, and acting like such would be very demanding of a college football player. Trevor Lawrence is still in the Heisman frontrunner. I think if he comes back and plays great, he'll get the invite, mostly as like a career achievement type of invite. He has not been invited to New York yet, but I do think he'll get the invite this year. I think of the teams right now, the team most likely to get 2 invited would be, to me, the Clemson Tigers with Etienne and Trevor Lawrence. Which, if you get 2 guys invited, usually you shouldn't have 1 guy winning. But that's how it is. When you look at some of the straw pulls around. I think it's been a very hard choice between the two Clemson guys for a lot of people, but I still would take Etienne over Trevor Lawrence right now. I think if he has a huge game against Notre Dame next week, he's going to supplant Trevor Lawrence as the Heisman frontrunner for the Clemson Tigers, and he's going to take it over. All right, but we all know Trevor Lawrence. He's had some really good games this year. His moment was going to be against Notre Dame. He now does not get to have that moment. So I think we locked that one out. So some other honorable mention guys. Zach Wilson, BYU. I think he's had a spectacular year. I just don't see him winning this award over two quarterbacks who are doing it in two much better conferences against much better schedules. Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence doing the same things against Power 5 opponents. Zach Wilson's had some very easy opponents on that list that I think Ohio State would beat by 100. Honestly, I'm not even kidding if they really wanted to. Now you got Najee Harris. Breece Hall is the best running back I've watched this season. He has been absolutely spectacular. And then I said this before the Bama game, and then Devontae Smith went off. Devontae Smith, that guy, he can play football. I don't think he'll get the invite. I think Najee Harris and Mac Jones get more of the buzz, but Devontae Smith is a guy who is going to continue to have games like that. He is now the definitive number one option on Alabama. But watch out for him. And then for me, it is Khalil Herbert at Virginia Tech. I really like the guy. I think he's playing football at a very high level. He's really making Virginia Tech must-see TV on Saturdays. And that is my Heisman so far. That's my list. We'll see how it changes. The Pac-12's finally going to start playing. You can't really vote for players who haven't played. You're going to be able to finally get the whole picture, and that is what it's all about. Next on the list, we're going to hit that NFL whip around real quick, and that's going to close out the show today. On Thursday, we will do our normal show. We're going to talk about the NFL weekend. I'm going to talk about what moves I made in fantasy football and why they are going to finally get my team on a winning streak. And today, after the NFL whip around, I am going to tell you guys how my fantasy weekend went because, once again, it did not go well. All right, so here we go. NFL whip around. Started Thursday. Falcons beat the Panthers. Every single person on the internet has jokes. The Falcons were going to blow this game from the get-go. We all know. We get it. You guys are so funny on Twitter. Oh, 98%. It's time, Panthers. Well, you know what? You gave me false hope. All right, I thought DJ Moore was going to score a game-winning touchdown. I was going to win fantasy football. Checkmate. All right, but Matt Ryan did not play very well. I think this was a very average game and some very interesting weather would be the best way to put it. Todd Gurley had a decent game. Brian Hill had a good game. But the Panthers, at 3-5, I think you're going to start seeing some inconsistencies. They got the Chiefs this next week, so 3-6 is right in their future. If they win that game, I'd be very surprised. So now you've got next on the list, we've got the Vikings-Packers. So this game, everyone just kind of assumed the Packers were going to win this game. The Packers have been a very good football team this year. Will they win the Super Bowl? I highly doubt it. But the Minnesota Vikings didn't really do anything special, all right? You want to hear Kirk Cousins' stat line? 11 for 14, 160 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 picks. The damage was done by one man, and the one man was Dalvin Cook, who cooked the Green Bay Packers. So the Minnesota Vikings scored 4 touchdowns. They scored 28 total points, and they beat the Packers 28-22. All right, so you have Dalvin Cook, 30 carries, 163 yards, 3 touchdowns. You got Dalvin Cook, 2 catches, 63 yards, 1 touchdown. That was the game right there. That was it. Dalvin Cook. NFL whip around. Dalvin Cook. All right. I already talked about this game, the Bengals. I have never seen the Bengals play that complete of a game offensively, defensively. It was actually kind of amazing watching them play football like that. Joe Burrow, 26-37, 249, 2 touchdowns, taught the boys how to win. The Titans, on the other hand, couldn't really get anything going throwing the football. Ryan Tannehill, 18 for 30, 233, was playing from behind for the most part. Couldn't really get much going on the run game in the front there. They just weren't really there yesterday, I guess would be the way. But if you had Corey Davis in fantasy football, which I didn't, you guys had a good day. Next on the list of the whip around is the Jets-Chiefs. I'm not even going to talk about it. We all knew how that was going to go. Next on the list continues, Colts-Lions. All right, so the Colts are at a very surprising 5-2. All right, when the Browns beat them, I was kind of in shock that we won that game. I thought the Colts were going to be one of the better teams in football. I was like, the Browns beat them. They can't be that good. But I'm starting to learn that Phillip Rivers is the Kirk Cousins of this season. Everyone started doubting him. Everyone started doubting his arm strength. And then they started taking off. Now, Jordan Wilkins, never heard of him. Had a great game. Jonathan Taylor, have heard of him. Had a very poor game. Naheem Hines had one of the best catches I've seen this year. And he was a running back. He scored 2 touchdowns in the passing game. That's how you coach Frank Reich. That is how you get it going. You utilize your talent in the most immediate ways possible. And the Detroit Lions, once again, fall apart. And after a huge win the week before, blow it big time this week. So, yeah. Moving forward, again, we had the Steelers-Ravens. This was one of the better football games of the year. Very back and forth, very crazy. The Ravens got the lead late, but then the Steelers went down and scored. The Ravens then went up, and they had a chance to score at the end. They weren't able to complete the pass. Ben Roethlisberger didn't play great. James Conner didn't play great. It was kind of a bad weather weekend in the AFC North. It was kind of hard to get going throwing the football. And then what I said the week before was Lamar Jackson was probably going to have to unleash that dual threat ability of himself. He did not, but the running backs really made up for it. J.K. Dobbins, 15 carries, 113 yards. Go Bucks. Gus Edwards, 16 carries, 87 yards, and a touchdown on the day. You got after it. They are probably an elite wide receiver away from being a really consistent passing football team. It's really hard to rely on guys like Devin Duvernay, a rookie from Texas, and Willie Snead, a historically known burner, not really known for his possession stuff. The Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa's debut didn't do anything that crazy, and the Rams didn't do anything that crazy, making this a very boring football game. Tua, 12 completions for 93 yards and a touchdown. Now, granted, he didn't have to play much. Myles Gaskins didn't have to play much. We lost some offense series that game, and it was a good game by that defense. So this is the stat that'll drive the Dolphins moving forward. They have the number 1 defense currently in the NFL, all right, and no players over 30 years old. So what's that mean? They're young, they're cheap. They have the Houston Texans first and second round draft picks next year. So it is going to be a good run for the Miami Dolphins here in the near future. As long as they hit onto they will be looking good for the time being. We discussed the Patriots-Bills. It was a close game, but both of these teams were trying to lose throughout its entirety. Josh Allen didn't look great until he scored a touchdown. Obviously, he ran for it because I'm playing him in fantasy football. Patriots, they won, and Cam Newton, he fumbled on a play where they would have been in field goal range. It was actually a very bad time to fumble the football. Then you got the Raiders. Browns, don't like to talk about this one. The Browns couldn't get anything going on offense, and they couldn't stop a nosebleed on defense. The Raiders ran it down their throats for 3 of the 4 quarters in time. They had most of the time of possession, and it showed. All right. Broncos beat the Chargers. I left, okay, because the Chargers were winning this so handedly, okay? And then all of a sudden, I come back, and The Broncos won. I don't even know where to start with this one. We'll watch the highlights after the show. I don't care, honestly, to include it. But good for the Broncos, right? I don't know how the Chargers historically keep doing that. They just blow games. The Saints-Bears game was kind of ugly. Didn't really enjoy it. The Seahawks took care of business against the 49ers. And then last night, I turned this game on for 10 minutes. It was nothing I would ever want to put myself through again. Sorry, Ben DiNucci. You're not very good. It's not your fault. You should have never been playing in that game. Ezekiel Elliott has become a shell of himself on this football team, and it hurts my heart to see. Outside of that, I do not know how the Eagles did not win this game by 3 or 4 touchdowns. I don't know how Jalen Hurts didn't get to play more than he did. I don't know how the Philadelphia Eagles were losing at halftime. Okay, these are all questions I have for the world because the Cowboys are awful. And you know the worst part is, the Cowboys are one game back in the win column for first place. They are not out for the count yet. And that is the worst part of this game. And that is the worst discovery I made this weekend. You look at the standings. It is not cool that this is what it is. You have the Washington football team 2-5. You have the Cowboys 2-6. They are in range of first place. Like the Giants aren't technically out of the playoffs yet. At 1-6. That's where the NFC East is. That is so bad. They don't deserve a team in the playoff. Just like we shouldn't expand to 8 teams in college football, but that's an argument for a different day, and that's how I'm wrapping up the show today. No fantasy advice this week. No one should ever take it again. I'll actually take it because usually when I tell someone else to do something and I don't make that same move, it usually backfires in my face. So if you guys want to know all the moves I made this week, this is what it was. This is how my fantasy bench ended up doing. So, players I added to the team this week. All right, it's loading. My team, my matchup. Players I added to the team this week. Mike Williams, 21 points. Curtis Samuel, 21 points. All right. You want to know how my receivers did? Tyler Boyd did fine. DJ Moore, 7 points. All right, so really, I could have won if I just played 2 players I picked up this week. If you pick up, this is my fantasy advice. If you pick up a player, you're picking them up for a reason, play them. That's the advice I got this week. All right. And also, if you have a guy who's injured and someone wants to trade you for an injured player, take the points. All right, adios. That's it for today. Follow me on Twitter, Chris Rennie CFB. Subscribe to the podcast. Rate the show. Let's get after it this week. Go Bucks. Adios, muchachos.